Well, thank you for having me out here. Bruce Rauner tried to keep me at home today, but he couldn't do it. But I'll tell you one thing Bruce Rauner has done for us. He's united Democrats as we've never been united before.
There you go. Amen.
I used to think that the worst thing in the world was a bored and apathetic Democrat. Worse than that is a bored and apathetic Democrat that doesn't vote. Bruce Rauner is going to get Democrats out to vote, not only the next time he runs, but in every election between now and then. And so this is good for our state ticket, it's good for our state rep candidates, our state senate candidates, local candidates coming up in 2016. And make no mistake about it, everything that Bruce Rauner is doing now is designed to point at the November 2016 election. His desire to cut labor off at its knees, to ruin the middle class, to keep us in a position where we're on the defensive, to raise all the money he's raised, to try to beat not only Democrats, but Republicans that don't agree with him. All of that comes from his desire to take us all down. His mentor in the world is Scott Walker.
Oh, God.
Scott Walker, who got what he wanted in Wisconsin.
Oh.
He was able to hurt the labor unions, and when he did that, look what happened. The average wage in Wisconsin for everyone, not just people who were in labor, is down thousands of dollars. That's the kind of guy that wants to be president of the United States. That's the kind of guy who Bruce Rauner emulates. You know, I've heard from many Democrats that this fight in Springfield, this struggle, is really all about a power play between Madigan and Cullerton on one side and Rauner on the other. And I know some Democrats believe that, but that's not the case. Here's the case. We've got a governor who believes in nothing and Democrats that believe in the values that got us elected in the first place.
Right.
Take a look at why we're in the position we're in today. Democrats passed a budget to the governor's desk. This budget was a fair budget, an honest budget. It even had cuts in it. For those that say that Democrats are all about spending money, we love to spend money. But this was a budget that had almost $1 billion in cuts. We sent it to the governor's desk and we said, Governor, we need more revenue for this budget. He said, we don't have the revenue. We said, we have to find the revenue because this budget reflects our values, not just as a Democratic Party, but as a people. Even people living in Republican land, and I drove through some of that area coming through here today. Even people in Republican land believe we ought to take care of children with autism, and we ought to fund domestic violence shelters, and we ought to take care of the mentally ill. Governor says, tell you what, Madigan, tell you what, Cullerton, we'll get around to that, but I've got a list of things I want you to do for me first. None of these things, you understand, have anything whatsoever to do with the budget of the state of Illinois.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with the budget of the state of Illinois. Term limits, take away collective bargaining, all sorts of other things that have nothing to do with the budget, but the governor will stand on those things. And why will he? Because he doesn't care if we have a budget or not.
Yeah.
If we were to cave, aside from hurting all those people that we care about, the governor would be emboldened to do anything he wanted to do and take us further down the road that none of us want to go. If we don't cave, and believe me, we're not going to cave, the governor will simply say, look at those Democrats who don't want to negotiate with me. They don't want a budget. They don't want to negotiate. They don't want to do these things that are important to reform Illinois. The governor's entire agenda is to take us all down. And I don't mean just us here, and I don't mean just Democrats. I actually mean he means to take down the state of Illinois. Now, why do I say that? Why would any governor who spent all that money to get elected want to actually take down the state of Illinois? Because he's got a political agenda that is more important than the state of Illinois. He's got a political agenda that requires him to put us in a situation where AFSCME must strike because they don't have a contract, and then he can blame AFSCME, and then he can blame the people that AFSCME supports. You know, we spend a lot of time in our caucus, in the House Democratic Caucus, and I'm sure in the Senate Democratic Caucus they do as well, talking about why we're still there. You know, we don't get paid even our mileage for going down, but we go down and we do our work. And you know, in years past, we've had overtime sessions that I've been involved in. And in some of those overtime sessions, truth be told, some of my colleagues in the House Democratic Caucus have been pretty whiny. Why are we still here? Let's go home. We can't do this. We have summer vacations. We have golf. Imagine they get elected for public office, but they want to leave Springfield to go play golf.
Yeah.
But that hasn't happened this year. Every one of the House Democrats and Senate Democrats, to a person, are dedicated to standing up against this guy who wants to be the CEO of the state of Illinois, not the governor of the state of Illinois.
Yeah.
And I have said many times that when he first got elected, I would be more than happy to help him. After all, this is his first public office. I have been in office 26 years. And maybe I have something to do to help him. And I did meet with him. And I said, you know, Governor, I'm here to help. He said, well, you're not in my party. I said, I don't care if I'm in your party. We are professionals in Springfield. We care about the state of Illinois. And yes, we wanted to elect a Democratic governor, but that election's over. And now what we want to do is work together with you to improve the state of Illinois. We did that with Jim Thompson. We did that with Jim Edgar. We did that with George Ryan. And I said, you know which governor I gave the hardest time to? His name was Rod Blagojevich. He was a member of my party. Member of my party. So he said, well, what should I do to be a good governor? I said, the single most important thing you have to be able to do is learn to be our partner in Springfield, our partner in government. The Constitution talks about co-equal branches of government, not one over the other, but side-by-side partnership in government. And he said, wow, that's a novel concept. And I said, it's not a novel concept at all. In your business world, you told 20 people what to do, and by tomorrow they did it, or you fired them. Well, Governor, you can't fire me. I think he'd like to. Anyone who's heard my comments publicly on a number of issues knows he'd like to fire me, but he doesn't get that chance. I said, Governor, I'm not your middle management. I'm your partner in government. And he didn't get it then, and he doesn't get it now.
Right.
And as you heard from Linda Holmes, his number one target here are labor unions. Now, aside from the fact that there's a ton of people here who are from labor unions, and even if you weren't here, I would say what I'm about to say, labor unions in this state and in this country built the middle class. We don't have a middle class in this country without labor unions because way back before we had them, the robber barons owned this country. Labor unions built up the economy, built up the middle class, and not only for themselves and their families, but even for working people who are not members of organized labor. Because the benefits have flowed to them. Things like workers' comp and unemployment comp went to them. And so even people in Illinois and even people in this country who don't even like labor unions, who are working people, owe people in organized labor a debt. And I'm here to tell you, that Democrats in the Illinois House and Democrats in the Illinois Senate are simply not going to throw organized labor under the bus, because not only is it bad for them, but it's simply bad for Illinois. It is bad for the state of Illinois to have a middle class under attack by a guy who doesn't understand the middle class, by a guy who doesn't want to understand the middle class, and by a guy who wants to use working people for his own political purposes. It ain't going to happen on our watch, and I promise you, we don't care how long this takes. We will not cave in to Bruce Rauner. Now there's a lesson here. Linda related to it in her comments. Mike Madigan the other day said Bruce Rauner didn't win this election, Pat Quinn lost this election. And you know what? I love my ex-governor friend, but they're right. But, ladies and gentlemen, we also lost this election. Not in terms of who became governor, but Democrats lost our way in this last election cycle. We allowed it to get away from us. Some of us said, I'm not that big on Quinn. It's a blue state. He'll be okay. I'll just sit back. I won't walk that extra block. I won't ring that extra doorbell. I won't talk to my friends. I won't make the difference that I made when we elected the Democratic governor in the first place. You know, for the first 20 plus years of my tenure in Springfield, we had a Republican governor. Rod Blagojevich, remember him? Rod Blagojevich was the first Democratic governor we had in this state in 28 years when he was elected. And then we elected him, and whatever happened to him happened, but politically we got complacent. We let Rod's troubles get to us, and we didn't want to talk to our friends anymore because they were some of our independent friends and Republican friends who sometimes vote Democratic, made fun of him, made fun of us, made our life difficult. And then Pat Quinn came along in an unprecedented national financial crisis, and he couldn't keep up. And some of it wasn't his fault, and some of it was. But we let it get away from us. We didn't work as hard as we might have. And to my friends in organized labor, let's be honest, 30% of people in organized labor voted for Bruce Rauner. 30% of our friends in organized labor voted for Bruce Rauner. Some of them because of guns or abortion, some of them because they were tired of Quinn, some of them because someone else was asking them to. There's only one agenda. If we care about our values, then we have to work harder. Because the person who's in that executive mansion and the people that run the Illinois House and the Illinois Senate matter. It matters to the people of Illinois. It matters to our values. The reason you have people here today from the Illinois House and Illinois Senate is that we want to talk to you about our values, which are your values. So it's important, ladies and gentlemen, that you take this on as a challenge. Not a challenge for the other guy. Not, I've done this for a long time, I'm tired. Not, let someone else do it. But the challenge is to each and every one of us to do more than we've done. We're going to have some great people running for public office, for Congress, for the United States Senate, for state comptroller, for all kinds of and sorts and varieties of offices. Each one of them is important. Each one of them plays a role in public service that we should not ignore. And so I'm here to ask you to take on the challenge. I'm here to make sure that in the next election, none of us sits back and watches as our values go out the door because we've elected the wrong people. And aside from those who voted for Bruce Rauner or other Republicans who should be Democrats, we have another problem. And that problem is all the people who stay home. And ladies and gentlemen, the people that stay home are Democrats. The people that stand to gain the most from electing the right people to public office, because let's face it, most Republicans don't need anybody in public office. They're doing okay. The people that stood to gain the most from re-electing Pat Quinn stayed home. And it's our fault. Everybody here, no matter how hard you worked. And I know some of you are saying, oh my God, I was out every night. I was out every day. I called every friend I had. I did all I could. No, you didn't. Because every one of you knows someone who didn't vote, and every one of you has a car, and every one of you could have dragged that person to the polls with you. So please, take on the challenge. Make it important. Get your friends who are not registered to register to vote now. Now, while it's nice out. Because when you ask them to go in January, they'll tell you it's too cold. Get them to vote, get them to register now. Get them interested and involved. Go back to those friends who you bumped into at work and the barber shop and the gas station and at your churches and at your fraternal clubs. Those people who you were afraid to talk to because things in Illinois weren't so good, those people who you have avoided, time to go back to them. Say, what do you think now? What do you think of the Republican Congress? What do you think of Bruce Rauner? What do you think about the way the state is being run? A couple of more things and I'll turn it over to someone else. Mark told me I was the keynoter, so I thought I could talk long. So, on Good Friday, the governor of the state of Illinois cut $26 million out of important social service programs. Funding for epilepsy, funding for autism, which by the way was on World Autism Day. He cut their funding down to zero. Funding for immigrants who want to learn to speak English and become productive citizens. Funding for domestic violence shelters. Funding for all sorts of social service programs. This was a week after we cut a deal with him that he would not do such a thing. He did it. More importantly, 4 days later, he provided $100 million in tax breaks to some of the largest corporations in the state of Illinois. Some of you knew that, some of you didn't. I promise you none of your neighbors knew it. Don't wait till the next election to tell them. Bang on their door today. This is what your governor did to you, to the people you care about, especially if someone on your block has a disabled child, especially if someone on your block is a child of immigrants, especially if someone on your block needs state government. People need to know, but they're not going to know if we stay home. If we can't get this group motivated, and I think you are. Are you motivated? Yeah! I knew you'd say that. If we can't get this group motivated, how do we get others motivated? And so each one of you has to not only work a precinct and work the phones and write checks and go to meetings and make some noise. Each one of you has to create your own organization. Each one of you has friends that are interested. Each one of you has friends that has an interest in this state moving forward and in this country moving forward. So that's the challenge today. Not to let losses bring us down, but to take lessons from those losses and do what we can do to uphold our values, to uphold the people we care about. The Democratic Party is what it is because of our values, the people we care about. the downtrodden, the middle class, the people who are playing by the rules and trying to improve their lives. If we don't put people in public office that care about those things the way we care about those things, we're letting down all of those people and violating our trust in the Democratic Party. Don't do that. Be that person that goes the distance. And if you do, we're going to have great successes in 2016. And I promise you this, if we keep this going, in 2018, we're going to have a brand new governor with a D next to his or her name. We can do this. But don't wait for the next election cycle to start. For Democrats, the next election cycle has already started. Get on the ball. Do it today. Thanks for having me here.